Arthur Bruneau was the last Canadian pilot to sink a U-boat in World War II. This is his story.
Arthur Bruneau signed up for the Royal Canadian Air Force in 1942, just as he turned 19. After completing his advanced flying and maritime training and passing all the required physical and aptitude exams, he served as a co-pilot on a Liberator for 2 years. He logged countless hours of practice while flying solo and with an instructor, before finally being given his own plane and upgraded to pilot status. Therefore, he had a relatively short operational career.
Arthur Bruneau was mainly implicated in the Battle of the Atlantic, which is believed to be the longest campaign in World War II. During the war, England imported most of their resources from Canada. The Germans, who wanted to cut the British from their resources, would sink the Canadian cargo ships with their famous U-boats. Therefore, the Allies had to try and protect their cargo ships. Although, at first, destroyers and other battleships were used to protect convoys from German U-boats, the Allies quickly discovered that aircrafts were much better at neutralizing them. This is where the Liberator, Bruneau's aircraft, excelled. It wasn't the fastest of aircrafts, but was still much faster than any submarine and was capable of catching them and using its heavy weaponry to effectively destroy them. The Liberators were very large bombers that were manned by a crew of 10 or more and were notoriously hard to pilot. But this didn't stop them from becoming the most produced bomber ever. In fact, over 18,000 of these aircrafts were made.
Near the end of the war, Allies progressed northward and eastward. Many German subs were starting to head for Norway, hoping to escape the Allied forces. Because of this, the waterways between Denmark and Norway were full of U-boats. The 5th of May, 1945, Bruneau flew his first ever sortie as a pilot, on a patrol across the North Sea where he would pass near Denmark. The Germans in Denmark had just surrendered, but they were known for fighting till the last breath. In fact, the day before, one of the pilots from Bruneau's squadron had been shot down.
Arthur Bruneau saw a glimpse of peace that day. Indeed, he saw the Danish people cheering because it was their first day of freedom. He saw many Danish flags and people waving towards him because his plane was, in some sort, the liberator of their country.
The war wasn't over though, and Bruneau had to take the necessary precautions. He flew at minimum altitude to avoid being seen by German radars. Sure enough, Bruneau's radar picked up 2 submarines traveling one behind the other. Bruneau chose a second U-boat as his target and started to close the distance on it. The German subs spotted them and opened fire. Bruneau's front gunner shot back and his bomber aimed carefully while he took evasive action. Once they were in position, they let off 6 depth charges, all of which hit their target. The Germans didn't stand a chance.
The enemy ship sank at a 40 degrees angle, aiming towards the depth of the sea. Bruneau rounded the plane onto the second U-boat, but before he could get a clear shot, another Liberator bombed it instead. Bruneau circled the area where he had sunk the U-boat for 15 minutes until bodies came to the surface and a circle of oil started to appear. Satisfied by the confirmation of his kill, Bruneau continued his patrol.
Because of this, Bruneau received the Distinguished Flying Cross, amongst other medals, for his courage in the face of mortal danger and his outstanding piloting skills. He would also be highly regarded amongst his fellow airmen for having sunk a German U-boat on his first day as a pilot, whereas several others hadn't sunk one for the entire war.
Once the war was over, Bruneau returned to Canada to continue his life in peace. He had previously started a Bachelor in Arts, and after returning from the war, he completed it. After this, he decided to get a degree in law at McGill, which would allow him to become an accomplished lawyer. Finally, he ended up becoming Vice President and Chief Counsel of Alcan.
In the later years of his life, he would occasionally wonder if what he did on that 5th of May 1945 was justified. He often wondered if those Germans really deserved to die, and if his actions were really necessary, considering that the war ended barely 4 months later. However, the rest of Canada remembers him as being a great lawyer, a war hero, and a valued member of society, who sadly passed away in 2008 at the Montreal Veterans Hospital.